Okay, so I just built the latest version of Scribe on Windows, and this is 0.4.13, but this is a Windows build. So let's see how these the two features that I talked about in the previous videos work on Windows. So I can go to Fonts page within the Application tab, and we can see that there is a way for us to assign different fonts for different languages. So by default, the English one was Courier Prime. I've just changed it to Lucida Console, and I've also changed. Let me change Balutama to something like Tunga, which is the Kannada font that's usually used. Um, and let's say Mangal, which is the Hindi font that quite a lot of people like. So I'm going to save these changes. So now when I go to here my writing area, you can notice that it's using the new font. This is the new font, right? And if I change to Hindi, it's going to make use of the new Hindi font that I set. And if I change to Kannada, it's going to make use of the new Kannada font that I just set, right? So how does the custom keyboards work? So you can notice that when I go to transliteration, all of these combo boxes are disabled. Only the English one is enabled, right? And that makes use of the default inbuilt Scribe transliterator. I can use any of the English keyboards that are available. Now, so what I'm going to do here is I'll go to settings, right? And if I search for keyboard in here, right, edit language and keyboard options, I get a bunch of settings. So if I look at the English India option here, you'll notice that there is this QWERTY keyboard that's available by default, right? For English. So what I'm going to now do is let me search for, I'll choose to add a new language, add a new preferred language, and I'll type Hindi, and I'm going to say next, and it is going to search for Hindi fonts and transliteration keyboards and everything that's available on the Windows web service, and it'll download and install that. So now as Hindi is installing, I'm going to go to options here, and by default there is this Hindi traditional InScript, but let's say I want to also have the Hindi phonetic keyboard. So I'm going to have Hindi phonetic keyboard here. Actually, I'm never really going to use the traditional InScript, so I'm going to remove that so that we only have the phonetic keyboard. So it's going to take a while to download this and make sure that it is available. But as a function of doing this, as you can notice, I have Hindi showing up in my in the status bar here like this, right? Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go to settings, and in transliteration you'll notice that for Hindi the combo box became enabled. So I'm going to say give me the Hindi India keyboard, which is the phonetic keyboard that we have, and I'll say okay. So now whenever I switch to Hindi, it's going to actually pick up the Hindi keyboard from my Windows input method list. So when I now switch to Hindi, you'll notice on the status bar that it is now switched to Hindi, right? So I can go here and type right. So I get a very good typing experience now that I'm using the native uh, Hindi input method in Windows. So I can go ahead and install more languages. I can say add a preferred language. So let me search for Kannada. So I have Kannada, and I'll add this. So it's going to search for the Kannada language pack and everything, and it'll install that. And now I can go here. Oops, sorry, my bad. So I'll say Kannada, add this. So I'm going to go here for click on options. Again, in this options, I'm going to say Kannada phonetic input method editor, and I really don't want to use the InScript, so I'm going to remove that. So it's now going to download all the drivers required for supporting Kannada typing in Windows. And one of the things that you'll notice that Windows does by default is it does something very interesting. Uh, So if I go to language options here, and if I select choose an input method to always use as default, right? So I can say English India is the default input method. But then it provides me another checkbox here. It says let me set different input method for every app window. So which means that only when I'm in Scrite, right, whatever the input methods I modify will apply for Scrite. The moment I switch to some other application, it's going to go back to the default, which is English. And in that application, maybe I have changed it to Hindi again. It's only local to that application. And when you switch back to Scrite, it will be whatever language preferences I had in Scrite. But that's not the behavior in Mac OS. So we'll have to do all of this app specific keyboard thing by hand in Scribe. So at least in Scribe we automate a lot of this so that users really don't see a lot of hassle while using multiple languages in Scribe and not so much in other apps. Anyway, so now that we have the Kannada keyboard also installed in my Windows setup, so I'm going to go to transliteration here, and you'll notice that for Kannada now this new combo box shows up. I can say, hey, I'm going to use the Kannada keyboard from the Windows operating system whenever I switch to Kannada. So I can go here and switch to Kannada, and here it's going to say right, which is really cool. This is a far smoother typing experience than the transliteration that we provide. And again, even on Windows, we can do all these very interesting things like go to settings and say to formatting rules and say, hey, all my dialogues are going to be in Kannada, right? So I'm going to type a scene here. Let's start with English. I'm going to type a scene here and say this is a scene action text, and then right. So we get a very powerful typing experience when we use the inbuilt translators in the operating system.